Man, I still can't get over the fact that we had one of the greatest years in the lab's history. Hands down, this had to be legit the best year of the lab's history. And while that ended up somehow becoming my main focus for Minecraft content for at least basically all of 2022, of course, there were other places I was still doing stuff alongside the lab, but didn't put as much focus into outside of the labs. Of course, you can see where this is going. While the labs ended up being our main focus somehow in 2022, I of course couldn't have forgotten about Legos Island, my longest running world. Well, of course, 2022 for Legos Island was not as insane as the labs. Oh, no, God, no. Oh, no. It wasn't as insane, but I'll tell you, we did do some pretty cool things. I'll tell you that. And if you are wanting to know how crazy we got in 2022, obviously not as insane as the labs, of course. Oh, no, it wasn't that crazy. But if you were curious how 2022 went for Legos Island, this Saturday Stories is for you. In this Saturday Stories, I'll be talking about every single Legos Island event in 2022. While this year did mark the 5-year anniversary of Legos Island, we are about to hit the 6-year anniversary in around 2.5 months on March 25th, 2023. But we'll talk about 2023 next year around, probably around this time. But the point is, we got a lot to go through. Now, unlike the Zola's Lab events Saturday Stories, I hope to God, and I pray to God that this will not be 2.5 hours worth of video footage. I know, I cannot believe it was that long back then, but either way, I genuinely hope that as of recording this segment in this video, before we jump into everything, I hope right now that it is not 2.5 hours of video footage. So, to hopefully prevent that, let's jump into it. The New Year's Party 2022. It started on January 1st and ended on the 3rd. During this party, the color scheme was red and purple, and some of the remaining Christmas decorations from 2021 were still here during this party, mainly the trees. The island was decorated in a completely New Year's theme, again, with some Christmas decorations still staying, as I didn't have enough time to remove every single one. The same thing applied in 2023's New Year's party, but we'll talk about that next year. So basically, any place that I was able to get all the decorations down in time were decorated for this party, again in a red and purple color scheme to celebrate 2022. Why red and purple? I don't know. I feel like picking 2 random colors every year, much like how I picked out light green and dark green for 2023. But the point is, this party was basically all over the island. Also, another awesome new addition to this party was that it was the first New Year's party to fully take place at night. Also, speaking of which, this is the shortest New Year's party that has ever been held in Legos Island history, only lasting 2 days, aka the first 2 days of the year. 2023 would thankfully fix this by having it back to being free, like it was in 2020. Never mind, it never was that. That was 7 days. But yeah, this was the shortest New Year's party in Legos Island history, and we probably will never have one this short again. Oh boy. I'll admit though, there were some pretty cool New Year's items. Of course, we had the New Year's armor like usual that was spread across the island where all the trees were in 2021, so at least that was something. And yeah, that's it. Do I really need to say anything else about this party? Again, some leftover decorations from the year prior were still left up, but again, those were on purpose because I thought they would look nice, and I just didn't have enough time to clean them up. Anyway, while this was the shortest New Year's party, there was still some cool stuff. We had firework launchers literally everywhere during this party, and it was so freaking awesome. And with that being said, I have nothing else to tell you about this party because literally I there's really nothing else to talk about. And plus also, we have tons more awesome events coming out throughout 2022 that we're going to take a look at right now. Speaking of which, the Maze 4th Anniversary Party. It started on January 18th and ended on the 20th. Making this also, just like the New Year's Party, the shortest Maze Anniversary Party ever in LEGO's Island history. Once again, like the New Year's Party, lasting only 2 days. Thankfully, in 2023, it has been put back to a week due to the fact that it's the 5th anniversary this year around. But as of recording this Saturday Stories, that event is actually 4 days away from starting as of recording this Saturday Stories. Anyway, let's talk about last year. In 2022, for the 4th anniversary, the maze was decorated with a ton of end rods and a little snow segment in the halfway point of the maze. That was really, really cool. Of course, as usual, just to be clear, in this party, it is tradition that not only is the maze decorated with a ton of things, we even had this little snow maze right here, literally in the halfway point. As you could clearly tell, it was like a huge snow tunnel, and it was really cool. Now, of course, some parts of the island were actually decorated for this party. And fun fact, I think this was actually, correct me if I'm wrong, I think this was the first ever Maze anniversary, much like the New Year's Party, to also take place at night. Now, the same will apply this year in 2023 as well, so look out for that. Yep, some rooms on the island were decorated for this party, such as the event room and my cave, respectively. I don't know, I felt like it. And plus also, I think the year prior, I barely decorated any rooms. Oh, and even the balcony was decorated, so that was nice. Now, this party was actually really cool. While it did celebrate 4 years of the maze, this was actually really cool. As usual, we were even able to, of course, if I remember correctly, I think the tunnels were open too during this party. Am I right? Yup! As usual, the tunnels were open during this party, and they basically looked exactly the same as all previous years. Of course, a new set of armor to commemorate this party was obviously present, which is what I was wearing in the footage, which was spread across, I think it was spread across the cave again, like usual. Oh yeah, you see the little ice sculpt? You see the little ice brick back there that you just saw? Yeah, that's leading into our next event. I actually, wait, guys. The armor was actually spread across some rooms that weren't the maze. There we go. Now I'm getting it straight. Yep, you see the little ice bricks right there? Yeah, that's our next event. Either way, this was a really fun Maze anniversary. It was basically the same like all other Maze anniversaries, just it being at night, and some rooms were actually decorated during this party for the first time, I think, since 2020. With that being said, speaking of those ice bricks that you kept seeing here, the Festival of Snow 2022. Well, that is the only Festival of Snow. I don't know if I'm bringing it back. But for now, we'll call it Festival of Snow 2022, just in case in the future if I end up bringing this back next year. Anyway, it started on January 20th and ended on February 3rd, which is the exact same length as the Solus Lab 2 Winter Party, except its end date, which actually ended on the day that the ZL2 Winter Party was supposed to end. Anyway, that's besides the point. Go watch the Lab story for 2022 if you want a better idea of what I am talking about. Anyway, as usual, or actually, no, sorry, this was a new event. By the way, there were a lot of new events in 2022. In fact, there was even a snow sculpture right here, labeling 2022. That was really cool. Oh yeah! Speaking of which, speaking of it being nighttime in this footage, this party, for the first time since, I think, the April Fool's / Easter event of 2021, to have a day and night cycle. Yeah. And it is actually, I don't think, has ever been seen since. And Ultimate. Oh my god, I literally almost thought the recording froze. Okay. Anyway, as the name would suggest, the island was decorated in a ton of snow sculptures, and you could view them at both day and night due to the day and night cycle. Yep, as in tradition, we have snow sculptures based off of LEGO's Island Summer 2021 World Tour. Seriously, that was awesome. And we just had a ton more snow sculptures, and heck, even over in the Buffalo House area, which referenced past New York trips, that was pretty sweet. And what else did we have? We had one based off of Operation LEGO's Island. Don't worry, it was here in 2022. We even had one based off Master Evil Onkers. We actually had one based off of all three of the villains. And even had some based off of the dogs, too. There were even a ton of new custom items. And heck, even for the literal heck of it, did I mention, I think even the ice core rooms were actually open during this party. Yep, that's right. The ice core rooms were actually open during this party. And some of them actually had Festival of Snow decorations. Yep, some of them had Festival of Snow decorations, if not in all of them. With that being said, this was a really fun party, as it was, well, something different. While it was something that we did bring over from the lab, it was nice to see it elsewhere outside of the lab for the first time. And that can also explain why I held it. Also, like the winter party, we had a lot of snow left over from the Christmas party. But not as much. But just enough for us to make snow sculptures. This party was super awesome, and I truly think it was awesome. Now, are we bringing it back? Who knows? Definitely not in 2023, because we have the whole year planned. Go watch the January 3rd episode of LEGO's Island to know what I'm talking about. But there's actually more to this party than you may think. In the second week of the party, on January 27th, or more importantly, January 28th, we had a ton more snow sculptures added because on day one, I didn't have all of them finished in time. Purposely, that was something. We even had one based off of Club and Rewritten. Oh yeah, back when that existed. Right, I forgot. This was the same year we lost Rewritten. Oh man, I really do miss playing Super PSs. It ain't over! Trust me. I'll be back soon. Trust me, guys. I'll be back soon. Hopefully it won't be long until I officially make my comeback. But I promise you guys, I will be back in the community very soon. I promise. Well, of course, not Rewritten, since of course that's gone. But just the Stupid PS community alone, guys, don't worry. I'll be back soon. I'm gonna be real with you. I really do miss playing Stupid PSs again. I just have the urge to just go back again. Just made me realize, why did I stop? Yeah, I just got off topic, but the point is, a ton of more snow sculptures were placed around the Festival of Snow. Because again, I didn't complete some. And yep, as you probably saw in previous footage, there was no snow sculptures around here. And it looked really cool. Mainly some of the snow sculptures in week 2 consisted of more of the dog statues, which was really cool. Fun fact, speaking of all these statues actually, later on, these would actually become actual statues in a future room called the Statue Sanctuary. Anyway, that's really it for the Festival of Snow. There was not really much else to be said about it. Oh, wait, never mind. I actually got one more thing to say about this. And it's pretty crazy. After the party ended on February 3rd, some of the snow sculptures became real statues that would later on be added to the Statue Sanctuary. But the biggest and most insane thing about it is that 2 of the statues actually ended up not actually being real statues. That's right. You heard me. 2 of the statues ended up actually being robots. The Evil Cluck and Master Evil Oinker statues, snow sculptures respectively, were actually not snow sculptures and ended up being cover-ups for robots that would later take over Zola's Lab 2 during Operation Villains. So purposely, this led into Operation Villains, which, again, I talked about in the previous Saturday stories all about the lab events. But either way, that was a dramatic change in how that event ended. But did I mention there was actually an event that went on during the Festival of Snow's second week? Holy frick, I forgot how insane this was back then. Yeah, did I ever forget to mention that there was actually a secondary event that went on during this party? It was a shorter party, but it was actually more so a mini event. The Winter 2017 New York Trip 5th Anniversary mini event. It started on January 30th and ended on February 7th. During this mini event, it was to celebrate the 5-year anniversary since the original New York Trip 2017 Winter Edition that took place in real life back in 2017, 5 years prior to this. During this, the entire Buffalo house was completely buried in snow. This is because, in 2022 at the time, that house was actually buried in snow. So I replicated it in Legos Island. Of course, this was still going on during the Festival of Snow's final few days. With that being said, this was insane. And to make it even more clear, after the Festival of Snow ended, it was, well, a lot more emptier, I'll tell you that. Basically, this party featured items related to the trip from 5 years prior. But after the party ended, it was much, much easier to find each item, as the place wasn't fully crowded by snow sculptures at the time. There were items from January 30th to February 7th, again relating to the actual trip itself. And actual outfits that I actually wore in real life back in the day. It was nice to see them recreated inside Minecraft in this little mini event. Of course, this will be the only time this mini event is ever present in Legos Island. But the house being covered in snow, or at least just snow on the ground at least, will be here every year. With that being said, that was really cool. We had a lot of items as well. Next up, guys, was the 600 episode party for Legos Island. It started on February 4th and ended on February 7th. Well, at the time, we were extremely close to hitting 600 at the time. By the time the Festival of Snow ended, we were on episode 599. So literally the next day after, on February 4th, we hit 600. As the party suggests, the entire island was decorated with, I think, tan and orange colors representing the 600th episode of Legos Island. Actually, I think it was a mixture of brown, tan, and orange. Anyway, the point remains. Like all other milestone parties, there were items given away from the previous 100 episodes, as in tradition. With that being said, this was really cool. And one room in particular was a more unexpected room. But did I mention that this party started on the day of the 2022 Beijing Winter Olympics? Yep, it literally started that same day. So in commemoration of it, I decorated the village as China, as a little reference to the fact that this started on the same day as the Olympics back in the day. So that was a nice little touch with this party. And, well, yeah, that was a nice little surprise. Anyway, outside of that, that was the only really unique room in this party, outside of the milestone cake, of course. Outside of that, we just collected items from the last 100 episodes and saw that really cool village design to represent the Olympics. That was super cool. And that's basically it. It was just basically the same thing again as, like, say, the 100, 200, and 300 episodes. It was basically that again. Just with more rooms. There's really not much else to say. Most of these rooms looked almost exactly the same, just with different color designs. And, well, it was the first milestone party to have the candles on the cakes, at least. So that was something. But, genuinely, that's it. That's all we did, was just collect items in the last 100 episodes and see that really, really cool village design in favor of the Olympics. That was seriously awesome. And with that being said, there's really nothing else to say about this party outside of the fact that we can move on to the next one right now. Let's just be clear, we are only 20 minutes in, and we are getting through this a whole lot faster than I intentionally thought. The Valentine's Day Party 2022. It started on February 10th and ended on, well, actually, originally, it was only supposed to be a 5-day event ending on the 15th, but because it took over 2 days to make, it ended on February 17th instead to make up for it. Just to be clear, this probably had to be the most gigantic Valentine's Day party I had ever done on Legos Island. Oh yeah, that's right, there's Rewritten again. Miss that game. I think we all do for a fact. Seriously. Anyway, as usual, the island was decorated in a Valentine's Day theme, having every single color from all previous Valentine's Day parties in one, including one new color, whites. Yep. Actually, I think magenta as well, actually. So that was really cool. We even had a few throwbacks to the first Valentine's Day party at the medieval park, so that was a pretty nice throwback. Anyway, basically, whatever crate the construction was, the colored heart would be the color that the room would be decorated in. That was a nice little fun twist that I implemented. And some rooms actually merged in with each other. Some colored rooms actually merged together, which was actually pretty cool. That was a pretty nice, unique thing. It was nice to see all these colors crammed together, all the Valentine's Day colors in one, and it was just a really fun party, and it had to be purposely, I think, the biggest Legos Island Valentine's Day party of all time, as I just previously mentioned. Ultimately, though, I'm going to be clear with all of you, I am not going this insane again. I'm not going to lie to you. That took over 2 days to make, and ultimately, we do not need to go that insane again. While the party did look absolutely fantastic, fun fact, this room actually stayed for a while right here, because I completely forgot to clean it up. Probably because of how much I put in it, and that can explain why, yeah, I'm not planning to go this insane again, I promise. Because, holy frick, man, let's just be clear, it took forever to clean up this party. And that can explain. Because it was truly the biggest of all time. But was it worth it? Oh, frick yes, it was worth going this big. But is it worth it doing it again? No. Because of how long it took. I'll admit, though, this had to be one of my favorite Valentine's Day parties I had ever done in Legos Island, because I truly feel like I actually put a lot of care and effort into this party. Either way, though, we had a ton of Valentine's Day party items, as per usual. We had like an entire set of armor again. That was really cool. And fun fact, actually, this is going to be the first out of 4 times that I say this throughout this video. On Valentine's Day, fun fact, the actual day of Valentine's Day, we were introduced to an entirely new dog, a female dog named Heart, and was the first dog out of 4 dogs to be introduced in 2022. I'll talk about the other 3 as we go on into this year. That was a really awesome edition of this party. It was the first time since the Valentine's Day party of 2019 that we have gotten a dog with the party. So that was really cool. And that was Valentine back in the day. So that was really nice to see after 3 years. Anyway, that's it. Next up, guys, was HQ Expedition 2022. Oh boy, another lab event made their way over to Legos Island. And oh boy, it was awesome. It started on February 20th and ended on March 6th. During this operation, the HQ actually got destroyed on February 3rd. Which ultimately resulted in this event. By destroyed, not only was there a hole in the wall in the HQ, but ultimately the HQ got robbed back on February 3rd, 2022, and our goal in this event was to get everything back into the HQ after Evil Cluck stole everything. Ultimately, it was really insane, and it was actually pretty hard to get everything back. I'm not gonna lie, it took forever to find everything. Ultimately, though, in the process, we managed to find everything. Only a few rooms were actually decorated, such as the the port. That was like one of the only rooms decorated, I think, outside of the campsite, and I think also behind the lodge. Now, here's what I mean by the HQ being robbed. Simply put, literally everything was gone from the HQ. And I mean, literally everything was gone from the HQ. And that's what the point of this event was. To actually get everything back, as I addressed. Again, it took forever to find everything because of how freaking hidden everything was. But I'll tell you though, it was worth it in the process. Fun fact, speaking of HQ Expedition actually, it's actually coming back in 2023 on January 25th, with a completely different storyline, but it is still based off of the HQ at heart. Just thought I'd bring that up. And if you're wondering how the event ended, and if we ever defeated Evil Cluck, freaking of course we did, then how did it go down? Speaking of which, it actually didn't happen until two and a half months after the event ended. On May 12th, 2022. But it actually merged really into May 16th. Because I forgot to finish it at the time. But either way, Evil Cluck was ultimately defeated in this. And holy frick, it was absolutely not. I mean, seriously, look at this. Also, this was the one battle in Legos Island history that I had to purposely do a voiceover because it wasn't recording my mic when I was originally doing the battle. I have never had to do this again, thankfully. Ultimately, Evil Cluck was defeated and everything was saved. Dang, that was awesome. Shooting him down like that. Mission 3 of this event, though, holy frick, it was difficult. It had to be one of the most difficult missions of the entire event outside of the battle at the end. Ultimately, yeah, this was pretty hard. But you want to know what was even harder? Trying to catch that one goddamn item on that freaking roller coaster in Mission 6. Now that we have that over with, now we're on to the event room 4th anniversary. It started on March 6th, and I think only went for like the one day. And yeah. So there we go. This party, of course, was on March 6th. And, of course, as you would expect, the event room was, of course, decorated for this party. For its 4th anniversary. It was decorated like more like an Oasis theme or something. If I recall correctly. What am I doing for 5 years? No clue. Other than the fact that I will actually be doing it. Of course, we had a yearbook as usual. It feels like this is like one of those only events where we actually purposely do have a yearbook for it. Why don't we do this elsewhere? Outside of Legos Island, of course. For anniversaries. Anyway, this was really, really cool. It had to be one of the more creative event room anniversaries in my grand opinion. I truly think I went all out for this one. And I don't think it can get any better than this. You never know what I can do in 2 months when we do hit the 5th anniversary, but this is nice. I truly do like this. It looked more like an Oasis theme. And a more just beautiful version of the event room. Of course, the only item available was obviously the anniversary hat, of course, as per usual. And with that being said, there's really nothing else for me to tell you about this event. So let's move on to the next one, which is also a mini event. Just 2 days later, on March 8th, 2022, we had the dog park 3rd anniversary. It started on March 8th and only went the one day. As you would expect, well, this was actually a bit different. Because of the layout of the dog park changing over the past year, since the second anniversary occurred, aka the houses being around it. So that is what made this a little bit different. Not to mention that this time around, there were candles related to every single colored dog this time around, which was awesome. I don't know if that was a thing we did in previous years. If not, then that was cool. Anyway, the main colors of this party were mainly gray and tan, for the most parts. And it was really nice being a little more creative this time, and just the party definitely looked a lot more different with these houses being here, and it was nice seeing that. With that being said, as usual, I think the only item available, of course, was just the anniversary hat itself. Of course, on the cake itself, I mean, that was pretty clear. Of course, it was going to be the only item. Yep, every tent had a cake on it representing the colored dog, of course. So that was pretty sweet. That was a nice little attention to detail. Again, because I'm that good. Anyway, that's besides the point. Enough rambling on. We still have way more events to check out. This was awesome. Of course, we'll be back this year in March, on March 8th, with another anniversary party for this place once again. With that being said, that is it. Let's move on to the next event. Can you believe it? Literally only 31 minutes in, and we're already halfway through March. Dang, man, we might get through this faster than I may have intentionally thought. St. Patrick's Day / Pi Day Party of 2022. It started on March 13th and, well, was originally supposed to end on March 20th. Yeah, it actually ended on March 24th. Why is this? During the time that the party would have ended, I didn't have my Minecraft account transferred over, so I purposely had to do that before taking down the party. And by the time I was going to take down the party, I was informed that I couldn't play the game until I transferred. Ultimately, on March 24th, I finally gave in and did that, and I took down the party. Now, here's something really unique about this party. The Pi Day parties were only located in the inside rooms, and the outside rooms were all St. Patrick's Day rooms. How awesome is that? Yep, that is for the sake of variety, people. Seriously, we should really take advantage of variety a lot more. And oh boy, you bet 2023 will make that happen. I hope. I better hope in this next year I actually get a lot more creative with variety. With just a ton of things. But ultimately, this party was actually really cool. And I think for the first time ever in the St. Patrick's Day parties, there were actual shamrocks. Yeah, that's right. You heard me. Actual shamrocks. Actually placed around the island. That was awesome. And it was so cool to finally see that after all these years. And I'm pretty sure similarly to 2021, there were colored green beacons as well. That was awesome. For the Pi Day rooms, on the other hand, as I addressed, they were only on the inside rooms. And, of course, as usual, they're all in orange and yellow. Of course, we had a ton of awesome items for this. And the same can go with the St. Patrick's Day party. There was so much gold as well. It was nice having a little bit of a change of pace. Having all the inside rooms be Pi Day, and then the outside rooms being St. Patrick's Day. Seriously, that was a really unique thing I did. I hope I do that again at one point. Maybe not this year, but you never know, guys. With that being said, I forgot to mention, very similarly to the Valentine's Day party, this is one other thing I forgot to mention. On St. Patrick's Day itself, and there's rewritten again, we had our second St. Patrick's Day dog, this being named Shamrock. And that's all that needs to be said about this party. I literally have no other reason to continue. But yep, this was done on St. Patrick's Day, very similarly to Valentine's Day as well. Let's just be clear, this wasn't the last event for a good while to now have a dog. Oh no! The next event, the 5th anniversary party for Legos Island, also had a dog alongside it, but it didn't arrive on the actual anniversary day. It rather arrived 5 days after the party began. But I'll talk about that in a few minutes. Oh my god, though! The 5th anniversary party of Legos Island. First off, this was the first anniversary party for Legos Island to fully take place at night. This was promised at the beginning of that year. And, okay, something just dropped. Oh, GameCube controller. Point is, the 5th anniversary. Holy frick, I did not need to go this insane. But I did anyway for the sake of the video. Holy frick, man. I did it because it was 5 years at the time. I, truly believed that I needed to go all out for 5 years. And ultimately, this was awesome. The party colors consisted of purple and amethyst, which were basically the exact same color. Like the 3rd anniversary party, some rooms were decorated as past rooms from previous Legos Island events over the last 5 years. And yeah, it was pretty wild. With that being said, holy frick, let's just say the dog park had to be one of my personal favorite places in this party. You want to know why? Not only that, but the entirety. And I mean the entirety of not just the dog park. No, the entirety of all the New York rooms were transformed into a freaking theme park. For the 5th anniversary. It was like a little fair. For the 5th anniversary. And it was awesome. There was this gigantic roller coaster, as you could see. And it was awesome. It literally had everything. Like, holy frick, man. I did not need to go this nuts. But I did anyway. For the sake of the anniversary. Again, this was 5 years. That's half a decade of this single world. I needed to go nuts. But you guys are very well in luck. 6 years, 7 years, 8 years, and 9 years. Yeah, don't worry. It will not be as insane as this. I greatly am not joking. I'm glad to announce that that's hopefully going to be the case, where I do not go crazy. Anyway, like I said, more past rooms from, the previous years of Legos Island's history. That was seriously cool. But now with a night lighting on them instead of the usual daytime. That was really cool at the time. So while most rooms had said past room decorations, some rooms were completely custom, dedicated to the previous anniversary parties. For example, the water park was decorated as, well, the 2nd anniversary. Well, it was a completely custom room based off the 2nd anniversary. This is just an example of these custom rooms. Just to be clear, there was, fun facts, if we can read it correctly, there was a message dedicating the 2nd anniversary of the party alongside an item from that said party after reading the message. That was awesome, and it truly showed that I put a lot of care into this. Of course, we couldn't have the 5th anniversary without, of course, Operation Legos Island in there somewhere. And of course, all temporary rooms from the island's history were brought back for this party. It made sense. And genuinely speaking, this was freaking awesome. While nothing in those temporary rooms were different, it was nice to see a change of pace. And just nice to see them again. As you could tell, this was the roller coaster for this said party. It was so freaking cool. And while it did take forever to make and it also took forever to clean up, I will always be proud of this, as I truly had a fun time with it. And I cannot get over how freaking awesome all of this is. Literally, we had rooms from basically the entire island's history, and of course, the infamous and famous Legos Island Summer 2019 resort design that ended up getting blown up at the time, which started Evil Cluck's first ever attack. We, of course, had to put that in there. Because, of course, did you really think we were going to forget about that? And even the Haunted Mansion from that same year also applied. Now, fun facts, this design actually stayed for a few months, as ultimately, a few weeks after the party, Evil Cluck ended up actually casting a spell to keep it like that until Halloween. Thankfully, though, during the battle against Evil Cluck in HQ Expedition 2 months after that party, we were able to get the lodge restored back, so that was nice. Anyway, outside of that, this party was absolutely awesome. Again, I will not be going this insane again in 2023 for the 6th anniversary. Oh, frick no. But I'll admit, though, this was so much fun to make. It did take a few days, but I'll admit, though, this was honestly my favorite anniversary party I have ever made in Legos Island history. And genuinely speaking, I just cannot get over it. It's just so good. And I just hope that I can make the 6th anniversary party not as big and probably not as better as this, but I'll definitely tell you it will not be as big. I'll tell you that one. I'll definitely tell you it will not be as big, but I'll assure you I will do something pretty cool for that. And yes, here's even more of those custom rooms based off of anniversaries. That was really neat. With that being said, I have nothing else to tell you about this party outside of the fact that for the 2nd event in a row, we got a new dog. I was almost about to go to the next event, and then I realized we had a dog during this event. As if the 5th anniversary party wasn't already freaking awesome enough, we had another dog join the island in the form of, well, Cake, another female dog. And this would be the last dog for a good 8 months until November. And yeah, the anniversary party started on March 25th and ended on April 1st. But ultimately, this had to be the best anniversary party I had ever made. Let's move on to the next event, which is actually just a few mini events. The Hotel 4th Anniversary. It only lasted one day, March 27th. And this was all held on the hotel roof. It went on during the 5th anniversary party of Legos Island, which is as expected. Anyway, like I just said, the only room decorated was the roof of the hotel during this party, as all the other rooms were still decorated as the Halloween decorations from the year prior, in 2021, while that was still decorated as the Big Brother Season 8 design. Speaking of which, we will be back to that series very soon. I promise. And I hope I can actually say that with legitness this time and hopefully not prove you guys wrong. That would be nice. Anyway, you guys get the point. Of course, as usual, the only item available was, of course, just the anniversary hat. But it was also a nice little change of pace having it on top of the hotel rooftop, because everywhere else was still like Halloween stuff at the time, down in the other parts of the hotel, which thankfully now are not the case. I think, at least, I should hopefully check on that if we go back to the island again. But ultimately, that's really it. That's literally all that needs to be said about this party. There is literally nothing else I need to say other than the fact that I think I did a pretty good job on decorating this room. With that being said, we have one other mini event. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, during the 5th anniversary party, I actually forgot to mention to you guys that the Medieval Kingdom was actually decorated for this party. During the 5th anniversary. I completely forgot to tell you guys that. When talking about the 5th anniversary, I just remembered now, as we were about to talk about another certain anniversary. One second, let me find it. It is the water park 3rd anniversary party. It only lasted one day, March 31st, 2022. As usual, this would of course celebrate the 3rd anniversary of the dog park, with the only item being available being of course the anniversary hat. This took place on the final day of the 5th anniversary party of Legos Island. Oh my god, so much happened during this party. Like 4 things happened during this party. Holy frick, that was a busy week. Anyway, there's not really much to say outside of the fact that, yeah, it was another water park anniversary, alright. And this was the day after Cake was introduced, so that was pretty cool as well. Ultimately, though, there's not really much else to say about this, aside from the fact that, well, yeah, there's not really anything else to say. The only part of the water park that was actually decorated was the downstairs part of it, like the lower parts of the water park. This was due to the fact that the upper parts of the water park were actually still decorated for the 5th anniversary, and the only place that wasn't was the lower part of the park. So I purposely had to only decorate it there. That can make sense. With that being said, nothing else to be said about this party outside of the next party, that of course being the April Fool's Day Party 2022. It started on April 1st and was only meant to go for 3 days, ending on April 4th. However, it actually ended 7 days later than that, on April 11th. This was due to the fact that I had still not showcased the event at the time that I made the party. So ultimately, it ended on April 11th. And yeah, hey, don't worry, that's not going to happen again. This year's is only like 2 days long. With that being said, this party was absolutely insane. Stuff like the mountain here being melted, that was a little funny joke. But ultimately, there was a lot more in this party than I intentionally thought. And yes, even the water changed into lava with the anvils and stuff, which I think that was actually the last year we did the anvils. And yeah, that had to be the most insane thing I did during this party. I think this was the last year that the anvils were used during this, as I think it's been overdone at this point. Who knows what kind of joke we're going to come up with this time, but ultimately, that was really funny. And, oh yeah, the April Fool's joke. By the way, let me talk about that as we jump into it. So basically, the April Fool's joke was that my weapons were actually taken away. And in fact, they actually were taken away as an April Fool's joke. We thought that Evil Cluck took them, but in reality, it was just an April Fool's joke and the items were just gone until the party was over. With that being said, it was so weird seeing that. Of course, that was pretty cool. As usual, like all other April Fool's Day parties, of course, it was as in tradition that, of course, all of the other portals related to each area across the Legos Island world would be decorated, or just random areas around the Legos Island world. Yep, and this was just a returning thing from April 2020. Yep, it was just returning from April 2020. And ultimately, that was pretty cool. Of course, the actual April Fool's Day party did have some actual jokes, such as, first off, the entire floor in not only the event room, but also, just to be clear, my cave itself, the floor was completely gone. And even in the Cave of Adventures as well, to the literal point where it was extremely hard trying to navigate these rooms for the entire party, as this was clearly just an April Fool's Day joke. This was pretty wild. And I'll admit, it was pretty insane. And what's even more crazy is that all of the arches, including the prize booth for the theme park, were just straight up gone. Also as an April Fool's Day joke. That was pretty insane. And yes, more medieval banners and items related to April Fool's Day as well. That was really cool. And that's genuinely it. I cannot think of anything else to say about this party outside of the fact that this was one of the craziest April Fool's Day parties I had ever done. But I'll admit, it took forever to clean up. So much so that some of these rooms actually stayed until after another event that we'll be talking about later. Just because of how long it took for them to be cleaned up. Or for another reason that I will mention later. Ultimately, rooms like the Pet Cemetery Mountain room actually stayed after the party. Because of another reason. And ultimately led into another event that we'll talk about later. And oh frick, yeah, the village was insane too. With that being said, there was holes everywhere and the path was extremely unstable. It was truly insane at the time. With that being said, there is nothing else for me to tell you about this party. And with that being said, let's move on. Yeah, no blacksmith shop anniversary this year around. I didn't do it, but don't worry, it is back this year for 5 years. Anyway, next up, the Easter/Earth Day party of 2022. It started on April 15th and was originally, well, actually, the end date was actually the way it was. The video was made a few days after the party on Easter. Anyway, April 15th ending on the 25th. Yep. I almost thought that there was like another alternate date. But nope, I just remembered, yep, this party went on exactly how long it was supposed to. Yep, 10 days. April 15th to 25th. During this party, as the name suggests, like 2019, the island was decorated with rooms merged with both Easter and Earth Day respectively, but unlike that party, there were actually rooms exclusive to each holiday. Some rooms would be Easter, and some rooms would be Earth Day. And even the recycling plant made its return after 2021 as well. That was really awesome too. And there was a recycle hunt again. So that was awesome, but I'll talk about that later. Since this was made on Easter, most of these rooms were showcased for the most of the video here were mostly Easter rooms. But I did cram in just enough Earth Day rooms, and here's proof that I wasn't joking that some rooms were Easter and some rooms were Earth Day. That was really cool. It was a nice little attention to detail. And it was nice to see that. Of course, we had some bunnies around here too. And my god, this looks so cool. Yeah, and see, this is where things get merged. Like, half the lodge right there was Easter and the other half was Earth Day. You could tell I was not joking. Hey, I did just like one reference to 2019, which was just merging some rooms. But ultimately, yeah. So every other day, or just every day, there would be one item related to each holiday every other day. And that was so freaking cool. Oh yeah, and the medieval park was merged with both. So that was something pretty special. And some rooms actually weren't decorated. In fact, this was actually one of the least decorated Easter/Earth Day events, as some rooms actually that were going to be decorated ended up not actually being decorated. And fun fact, this led up into our next event that we're about to talk about. That's right. This was about time. And we'll talk about that in a few minutes as well. Oh, I think you know what's happening next. If it said time on that sign, you know exactly what time means in this world. Oh, yeah. We'll get to that in a minute. We'll get to that in a few minutes. Let me just talk about the rest of this. So, as usual, we did have the Easter egg hunt on Easter itself. As usual, this was held to celebrate Easter. And that was really cool. Also, there was an entirely new Easter color implemented during this party. And that was blue. I know. Why did it take me until that year to finally do that? I don't know what was wrong with me up until that point. But yeah, as I said, some rooms that would have been decorated, and some rooms were actually not decorated that much. Now, I did explain in the video, one of the main reasons behind this was mainly because this was just a few days after Club Penguin Rewritten closed down. And I was still a little bit sad about that, so I didn't really go as nuts because I was still very, very, very sad over that. And I even explained it in this actual video itself that I'm showing you footage from. With that being said, and yes, even the Easter egg hunt actually resembled the one from 2017, but inside Minecraft instead. That was pretty sweet. Anyway, as for the Earth Day segment of this party, on Earth Day itself, there was, of course, the Recycle Hunt, as I just addressed earlier. This was held, of course, on April 22nd. All around the island, there were recyclable items, and what we needed to do was find them across the island and return them to the recycle center in the port to be able to receive an item. That was really nice at the time. Of course, it was pretty difficult, or not. I don't know, I just didn't think about that. But yeah, and some of them were hitting pretty well, actually, during this. And ultimately, it was a nice challenge. Oh yeah, here's just some more rooms from the party, by the way. Ultimately, though, this was a really nice challenge, and it was nice seeing this again after the year prior as well. As yeah, it was nice to bring it back again. And obviously, these were only in Earth Day themed rooms, much like the eggs were only in Easter themed rooms. It made sense this way. As of course, this was all about Earth Day. So that was really cool. That was another little thing we did during this party. Outside of that, this was one of the least decorated Earth Day parties, or just Easter/Earth Day events, in probably the island's history, because, yeah, you probably heard what I said earlier. And I still had greatly apologized in that video alone, in the original video where we showcased the event. It wasn't the most decorated Earth Day party, or just Easter/Earth Day event, but hey, I did as much as I could at the time. Now, don't worry, this year we're back to a more traditional one, because this year around, all three of them are finally separate again. Yay! That's awesome. All three of them are separate again. April Fool's Day, Easter, and Earth Day. They're all separate again, so we can, yeah, we can thankfully go back to just having just one for each holiday. 2024, on the other hand, yeah, well, that's another topic for another day, because we're going to have to do that again for April Fool's Day and Easter. You got to be kidding me. Now, this is the one I think we've all been waiting for. Operation Legos Island 2022. As soon as you probably saw that sign earlier in the footage that said, like, rooms from previous events were still there after their set events. Yeah, remember what I said earlier? Yeah. That's because of Operation Legos Island and the storyline that we had followed. It started on April 29th and ended on May 9th. It was originally supposed to be April 26th to May 6th. However, because we would have only had 1 day of downtime after the Easter/Earth Day event ended on April 25th, that would have had no downtime. That would have been very little downtime. So, I postponed the event 4 days until April 29th, giving us just 4 days to prepare for Operation Legos Island. And I truly think that this was a smart move. Now, the storyline was actually a bit different. During this party, it was actually completely different. For one, Master Evil Ungers was the one who took over instead of Evil Cluck. In fact, once again, in 2023, the same will apply, but with a different villain, Evil She Leader. During this party, why did I say the storyline was different? Not only did we have someone else taking over the event, but the entire attack scheme was different, as it ultimately was the fact that multiple time periods across LEGO's Island history were being merged into one single time period. That was something that we had never done before prior to this Operation LEGO's Island, and was later implemented in Operation Zoloslab 2022 in June of that same year, which I already previously had talked about in a previous episode of Saturday Stories. I do apologize if I keep bringing that up, by the way. Anyway, the goal for each time period was to bring it back to its original state, getting rid of all of the merged time periods whatsoever, and it did take a while, and I mean a really, really long while to do this. But was it worth it in the end? It sure was. On day 1, April 29th, we went back to the first ever day of LEGO's Island's existence, March 25th, 2017, because we had just surpassed the 5-year anniversary of the island at the time. So this made total sense. On day 2, April 30th, we went back to May 8th of 2020. Speaking of which, actually, the original time period for day 2 was actually supposed to be April 10th of 2020, but due to the fact that that time period was way too big to recreate, I instead had to go with a smaller time period for day 2. This absolutely made Master Evil Wonkers frickin' confused, as I ultimately tricked him into believing that we were going to April 10th of 2020. In reality, I ultimately changed the plan by going to May 8th, 2020 instead, ultimately making him confused. This was frickin' so much fun to do. And I may do this with Evil Street Leader. Do not be surprised if I do that later this year on May 23rd. Or just any day that we do Operation LEGO's Island. I forgot to mention something about Operation LEGO's Island 2022. Not only was the storyline different, and not only did we have somebody else taking it over, but the event was longer by 3 days. 10 days to be exact. That's right, 10 time periods. I forgot to mention that earlier. But since we have a long way to go until we're done with this event, I may as well have some time to put it in. So May 8th, 2020, which was around the time of Operation Freeze, which now, as we are aware, is back in 2023, in December, right before Christmas. So here we had to fix even more merged time periods that Master Evil Wonkers put into this time period, such as Operation Meltdown 2021 on February 18th. That was one of them, and that was the main one. And by the way, as the event went on, more and more merged time periods kept being put in. At first, it was just maybe like 1 or 2 or 3. Later on, it ended up being like 4 to 5 to even... Actually, I think that was it, actually. But overall, it just kept getting harder as the event went on. Day 3, on May 1st, we went to November 3rd, 2021, which was the 4-year anniversary day of my return to LEGO's Island, and the 2-year anniversary of Operation LEGO's Island at the time. So this genuinely made sense to be put in here. It was also a very special day, so that would have made sense. Anyway, like usual, this was merged with more time periods, such as Operation Dome 2019 at the blacksmith shop. That's just an example. I am not going to list all of them because that's going to take forever to do. I'll at least mention one. Because, holy frick, if I mention all of them, we're going to be here forever. In this video, we're already 1 hour in, and, well, you're not going to believe this. Almost nearly halfway through the year, actually. I said almost nearly. This was really cool. Like Operation Dome in 2019, we ultimately had to blow up the said dome for that said room to get rid of the merged time period. That was pretty cool, so that was a little something special. And fun fact, I think this was actually the last day that we only had like 1 time period. So yeah, that was pretty cool. Next up, on day 4, May 2nd, we went to May 8th of 2019, exactly 1 year prior to Operation Freeze. I think at this point, I'm pretty sure there were now 3 merge time periods rather than just 1. Ultimately, that was really cool, as it gave us more of a challenge, or at least in this case, myself. Dang, this was insane. With that being said, of course, as usual, I had to fix the set time period. Oh boy, it took forever. Some of the time periods actually include May 1st, 2021. Another includes October 1st, 2021, just as a little pure examples. And I forgot what the third one was. It doesn't matter. At least I mentioned a few. So at least that makes sense. Anyway, so yeah, now it was up to 3 merge time periods. So that was pretty awesome. But also a lot more freaking hectic for yours truly right here, telling you about this, and just in this video in general. Day 5, May 3rd. Because there was no blacksmith shop anniversary in 2022, we went back to April 14th, 2021, which was the 3rd anniversary of the blacksmith shop itself. In this merge time periods such as, well, May 15th, 2021, we also had March 6th, 2020, and I think we also, if I am saying this correctly, I'm pretty sure we also had, I think, December 17th of 2020. So that was a real hectic day. Ultimately, though, it was actually one of the easier missions, as there was only like 2 rooms of each. In fact, actually, I think this was around the time where actually there were more than just 1 room for each of the 3 time periods. So that was making things even more difficult for myself. But ultimately, I pulled through and got it over with. Day 6, on May 4th, we went back to January 21st, 2021, which was the day of the first ever prehistoric party. Anyway, the merge time periods, you're all wondering. In fact, this was the last mission before we had 5 merge time periods in the next one. So, ultimately, some of the merge time periods probably included the following. One of them included, well, a previous time period we just talked about earlier in this video, which was April 1st, 2022 for the April Fool's Day party. So that's one. What else did we have? We also had, Legos Island Summer 2018 in the blacksmith shop. So that was something. Did we have anything else? Yes. March 14th, 2019. Dang. These were a lot more easier rooms to actually clean up. Now, putting them back in the prehistoric designs, that took a bit of time. But I ultimately pulled through very, very quickly. With that being said, yeah, this was the last time before things truly got difficult. Right now, to be exact. Day 7 on May 5th. We went back to September 15th, 2018, which was the same day that the theme park opened. At this point, it was sounding even more difficult than the last. 5 merged time periods. I know, this was truly getting to be one of the most difficult Operation Legos Islands of all time. And ultimately, you could tell it was. Now, if you want to hear my full explanation of this, go watch the original videos to get a better idea of what I'm even talking about. The original episodes related to that. Some time periods, such as September 12th, 2020, as well as September 15th, 2019, as we could see here as well, alongside, well, actually, I said that I wasn't going to mention all of them, but September 15th, 2020, which, fun fact, is, I think is actually one of the time periods for this year's Operation Legos Island. I won't be surprised if that's the case. I'm pretty sure it is, actually. But ultimately, I don't need to mention all of them because, like I said, we're going to be here forever if I mention all of them. So, now that you know that we had an even harder challenge, let's go on to day 8, May 6. We went back to March 25th, 2019, the second anniversary time period inside Operation Legos Island. This here in particular, this little daily spin thing took forever to get into the one that we did on the actual day. I'll mention that. As for the merge time periods, I'll of course mention just a few. One of them being, well, the 4th anniversary party on March 25th, 2021. And then this from the 5th anniversary on March 25th, 2022. And what else do we got? I'm pretty sure there was more here. That intentionally thought. Why do I feel there were more here? It doesn't matter. The point is, yeah, there was still a lot here. And ultimately, that was pretty cool. Oh, yeah, the 100 episode party. There we go. Now I'm getting it right. But those are just a few examples. And yeah, you could tell the challenge was truly getting even more difficult. We were getting even bigger merge time periods to clean up, proving the challenge was far from easy here. Going on to day 9, May 7th? Yeah, there we go, May 7th. It was the only time period that we went back to actually be previously from 2022. And ultimately, the scary part. We actually, for the first time in Operation Legos Island history, and just Legos Island history in general, this mission, we discovered my past self. Thankfully, we didn't actually encounter my past self, but we did hear it coming from the HQ. Purposely, I tried everything possible to hide away from my past self during this time, and I thankfully succeeded. Of course, if you ever see yourself in the past, do not encounter it. That's a bad thing. Oh wait, that's right, you can't even time travel anyway. But this ultimately was a bad thing. Encountering my past self. That was insane. And ultimately, for all of this nonsense, I was still caught by Master Evil Oinkers. Come on, man. I just wanted to have some fun during this. Ultimately, he caught me doing something. And ultimately, this was a retelling of February 3rd, 2022, which we previously discussed earlier in this video. And ultimately, it was actually not just a retelling, but of a more remixed version, as ultimately, I revealed to the past Evil Cluck and Master Evil Oinkers that I was the one who made the miss when shooting the Cool Cat 33 statue. Ultimately breaking the frickin' timeline! Yep, for the first time ever in Operation Legos Island history, we ultimately broke the timeline as well. So not only did Master Evil Oinkers break the timeline, but yours truly also broke the timeline. By not having the Cool Cat 33 statue destroyed, and instead ending up blowing up the robots themselves, and having them take over, which they later confirmed that they were going to take over Legos Island instead of Zolazab 2, breaking the entire purpose of Operation Villain's existence. I ultimately destroyed them to prevent it, but ultimately doing this ultimately resulted in corrupting the timeline. This was not my greatest moment, but I truly did appreciate what I did here. While yes, I did corrupt the timeline and I was caught by Master Evil Oinkers in the process, I'll tell you, this was freaking fun. While if the timeline was corrupted, how does Legos Island still exist now is beyond me. The point is, thankfully, I don't even know. But the merge time periods were all from February 3rd back in the day. such as February 3rd, 2019, February 3rd, 2020, February 3rd, 2021, and February 3rd of 2022, all respectively. That was really cool. Lastly, but not least, Day 10 on May 8th, of course, was the future. Ultimately, we battled against Master Loinkers in the usual space theme that we always do, but this time, it was actually regarding the music game that we found out back in, I think, it was, right, Operation Rescue, right. It was back in Operation Rescue that we first discovered the music game. Ultimately, after Master Loinkers was defeated, we were able to explore the crystal clear future. That was super cool. And if I get footage right now, let's see. Yep, that there ultimately was the end of Master Loinkers for now. Ultimately, after defeating him, of course, I explored the crystal clear future. This being November 4th, 2000. Oh my god. November 3rd, 2024. There we go. November 3rd, 2024. 5 years after Operation Niggles Island became a thing. Of course, as of recording this video, we are well over a year until we actually hit that day in real time. But the point is, I think we'll be good. Anyway, the future looked awesome. And it had to be one of my personal favorite future designs of all time. It truly showed I was really creative this time around. And I truly had a lot going for myself here. Ultimately, this ended Operation Legos Island 2022. And now, finally, with all of that wrapped up, we can finally move on to our next events, the Minecraft 13th Anniversary Party. Yes, just 8 days after Operation Legos Island ended, we got another mini event. And by the way, speaking of that board back there, that relates to our next event. This party only lasted one day, May 17th, and was to celebrate Minecraft's 13th anniversary. As usual, I will have a mini event for this on May 17th once again. Obviously, right before the Operation Niggles Island. Anyway, as the name suggests, this is obviously just a little mini event that was just spread across some of the rooms across the island. Not everywhere, of course, as this was just like a one-day mini event. Yep, maybe just a few rooms such as the lodge, port, and my cave were all decorated respectively for this party. And I think even the village too, if I remember correctly. Let's see if I'm right. Where is the village? Where is the village? I'm pretty sure that was decorated too, right? Yep, okay. I think it was only like my cave, balcony, port, lodge, and village. I think those were like the only 5 places decorated during this party. And, well, some items were available, such as the 13th anniversary hat, of course, the creeper banner, and, of course, well, the grass block as a little reference to the logo of the Minecraft launcher. And the Mojang banner, of course, because we got to remember who created the game. We always got to acknowledge who created Minecraft. Anyway, with that being said, there's not really much to say about this mini event outside of it just going for one day. And, yeah, it was one of the least decorated, I think, anniversaries. I think one of the lesser decorated ones. But it was still a really fun anniversary whatsoever. It was really nice seeing this. And, of course, we'll be back this year for 14 years on May 17th once again, as I previously addressed. But now, the main event of May, the surprise party. A.K.A. the Festival of Lights 2022. It started on May 18th and ended on May 28th. It was originally supposed to be, actually, fun fact, May 13th to the 27th, just being the surprise party itself. However, due to Operation Legos Island being postponed, I had to later delay it to May 17th. But I couldn't get the event out in time, so I had to do it May 18th instead. Ultimately, though, it was worth the wait. You guys voted for the Festival of Lights out of a vote between the Best Party Awards and Celebration of Spring, with the Festival of Lights alongside it. Thankfully, though, those other two options are now being held here in 2023. Thankfully, though, that's really awesome. As you would expect, the island would, of course, have an eclipse, and there were lights all across the island to bright up the island during this eclipse. This was super cool, and this was just a few weeks before the frog lights were officially added to the game. Which now, I was originally supposed to do Festival of Lights again this year with those said blocks, but I scrapped it in favor of Operation Wilderness. Which, speaking of which, how long did it take you guys to notice that Operation Wilderness was not here in 2022 for LEGO's Island? Yeah, did I mention yet? There was no Operation Wilderness this year. But it is now back in 2023. But yeah, as the name would suggest, again, there were lights all across the island in favor of this eclipse. This was the second time an eclipse occurred on LEGO's Island, the first being in 2020, right before the Halloween party. Now, that was going to be kind of the case again this year, too, if I even did the lights event, which would have been held in October. But again, that has now been scrapped in favor of Operation Wilderness. There were many awesome light events, items related to the lights event, and even just the eclipse itself. It was so freaking awesome. It was awesome to see the island with all these beautiful, pretty lights. And seriously, you guys were the ones who suggested this event. And I still thank you guys almost a year later for voting on just what event to do for May. You guys really seemed interested in me doing Festival of Lights, so I delivered. And a lot of you guys loved it, so I'm glad I was able to do that. Will we do another surprise party on LEGO's Island? Maybe in the future. Not this year, because we have the whole year planned. But maybe next year. Maybe next year in 2024 we can bring this surprise party back. Of course, with a different event winning, of course. Because, of course, I would not do the Festival of Lights again in the vote if I were to do that, since it was already done here. The point is, even the rewritten statue was lit up. And right after the party ended, actually, like one day after the party ended, it was later moved to the statue area. Just the statue sanctuary. I need to really get used to saying that again. With that being said, this was awesome. And this was obviously an acknowledgement of Rewritten after a month of its closure. But my favorite room, personally, had to be the village. If you could tell, I was going absolutely insane with this event. And it truly shows. With that being said, this party was absolutely amazing. I greatly thank you guys for voting for the event of May, which again ended up being this event. It was nice. And it was awesome that I was able to make you guys happy with this event after you guys voted for it. But yeah, I will do another surprise party in the future. Maybe next year, because again, I have this entire year planned. But ultimately, yeah. It was awesome seeing this. And with that being said, that's it for the Festival of Lights. There is literally nothing else for me to tell you. It was just awesome seeing all these pretty lights. And basically the entire island, like all the inside rooms, I think were actually darkened in favor of these lights. So that was a nice little touch. With that being said, that is it for this event. This next event took place just a few hours before the Festival of Lights ended, but it was on the day that it ended, just right before I cleaned it up. The Cave of Adventures 3rd anniversary party. It only lasted one day, May 28th. Again, this was just right before I cleaned up the Festival of Lights. This was a bit different, but mainly also pretty much exactly the same at the exact same time. For this party, as you would expect, the entire Cave of Adventures was decorated for this party. And, well, I think the difference was that there was like, well, it had all the usual colors of the Cave of Adventures. and just cake all over the place. Fun fact, this was one of the only anniversary parties not to use candles, which was pretty weird. Ultimately, though, it was a nice little celebration. And, yeah, it was nice to see that. I guess the iron bars, I think, were new. I think all three of those blocks, I think, were new to the event. So, that was something. I'll tell you that for a fact. But, yeah, there's not really much to say about this event outside of it. I think only having just one item being the anniversary hat as usual. I think it's tradition that's the case. And yeah, even the event room was decorated a bit just for this. But there's genuinely not that much to say about this party outside of the fact that, well, it happened. Next up, guys, was the Memorial Day Party 2022. It was held on May 30th, 2022, because that was Memorial Day for 2022, which this year is May 29th. As with all other Memorial Day parties, the island was decorated in black and white, with Memorial Sheep returning as usual. But it was actually completely different this time around. You see, Memorial Sheep was actually captured by Evil Sheep Leader, I think. But yeah, and he also turned black and white as well. So, but yeah. Yep, the lodge mysteriously turned black and white as well, alongside Memorial Sheep itself. This making it the first ever mission-based Memorial Day party. We explored the black and white lodge in search of Memorial Sheep, and we ultimately found him right upstairs in the attic, all just black and white. He absolutely thanked us for this. And for the first time ever, there was actually color in this party. In favor of saving Memorial Sheep, the entire Memorial Day party went from black and white to actual color, proving that things actually can change in Memorial Day parties, and proves that we can actually go forward from just using black and white elements in Memorial Day parties. From this point forward, this would also be the time where all Memorial Day parties going forward would be all in color. But of course, staying true to the original event by having some of it be in black and white. Not to mention, this was also not just Memorial Day. No. In favor of this, did you know that ultimately this was actually also the Lodge 4th anniversary day as well. The same day that Memorial Day hit that year was also the Lodge anniversary. However, there was no anniversary party at all due to the Lodge being turned black and white. As a reward for saving Memorial Sheep, we were ultimately given the Lodge 4th anniversary hat in celebration. Ultimately, after the lodge was turned into color, we were ultimately able to see what all of this looked like in color. And even get the Lodge 4th anniversary hat in color. That was pretty awesome. Yeah, we ultimately got to see everything this party offered in color now, which was awesome. That was honestly the greatest thing to happen in this party. And ultimately, I truly am glad we finally put it in color. After all these years, we finally evolved from just doing that. And I'm proud of myself for finally thinking about that. It was honestly about time we did that, as it was getting a bit boring doing just black and white. Memorial Sheep showed us that, and proved to us that we needed to do something new. So, thank you, Memorial Sheep, back then for thinking of that. Ultimately, that is it for this party. And now, it's time for the biggest event of the year. You gotta be freaking kidding me. It wasn't just Operation Eagles Island. No. Another certain summer event got messed up as well. Legos Island Summer 2022. Holy frick. You do not understand how insane this event got halfway through. I'll tell you why in a sec. First off, holy frick, man. This had to be one of the most creative Legos Island summers of all time. I know World Tour was as well, but that will still always remain my favorite. But after how this year's played, this might be my new favorite. And I'll tell you why later. So, first off, this ultimately was a fruit paradise theme, where multiple fruits such as apples, chorus fruits, watermelon, the golden carrot, even though that isn't even a fruit, that's a vegetable, of course. We also had the sweet berries and the glow berries and all of that. It was truly just a really fun event overall, and it's crazy to believe that all of that happened. And very similarly speaking of, say, Legos Island Summer 2021, the majority of the mountain here was actually decorated. And that's truly saying something here. The majority of the mountain was decorated like 2021, which was really cool. As you would expect, very similarly to 2020, actually, on the other hand, we actually got water slides during the beginning portion of the event. And some rooms obviously weren't designed yet around this time, as they were saved for a later portion of the event as we got closer to them. Ultimately, though, this was seriously awesome. The Fruit Paradise theme was actually something that I actually had planned since 2021. It was ultimately the theme that year, but when World Tour became a thing, I pushed it to this year around. And was it worth waiting? Oh, frick yes. But that is absolutely nothing compared to what happens next. In episode 13 of Legos Island Summer 2022, one of the most unexpected things happened. The island turned completely different. It went from a summer paradise theme to a Fruit Island paradise theme to ultimately the most indifferent event of all time. This turned into a volcanic island disaster for the second half of the event, now forcing actual missions to take place. This was the most unexpected thing to happen during Legos Island Summer. We were just having fun peacefully with all the fruit items, and then this nonsense happens. And ultimately, things get changed. The end point of Legos Island Summer 2022 was originally supposed to be the hotel rooftop. But after I announced that New York trip that year would be in August, I changed it. This was actually before this attack happened, though. But ultimately, what he did was actually ultimately change the days of when we would be in each room, which I later confirmed actually was done by yours truly to make you guys think that that wasn't official. But I later confirmed it was. Ultimately, holy frick, this was one of the craziest things to happen. Let me tell you this as follows. Kicking things off in the resort was the magma area, where we fought a ton of magma cubes. The theme park was ultimately changed to look like the Nether. This was done by Master Evil 1 Curse, and the resort in the magma area was done by Evil Clock. By the way, each attacked room were done by them every other room, which was pretty cool. There, we had to fight the Wither, and die a lot in the process. The water park was turned into Lava Park by Evil Clock. There, we had to fight a ton of Striders. Correct me if I'm wrong about their name. The campsite ultimately turned into the Deep Dark, as we could clearly see here. And, well, the boss here should have been pretty obvious. That would be, of course, the Warden himself. Oh yeah, you bet this was frickin' difficult as heck, of course. I kept dying to this guy. After that fight was over, Evil Cluck turned the entire wilderness on frickin' fire. Holy frick. Yep, that's right. Literal freaking fire. Look at this. This is absolutely nuts. There was another challenge. We ultimately had to go the entire wilderness without touching the fire. And you do not understand how stupid, goddamn difficult that was. It was actually really difficult. And when I mean the whole wilderness was on fire, I mean literally the entire wilderness was on fire. There, we had to ultimately fight a ton of blazes, and my god, if the wilderness wasn't already on fire enough, it sure got a whole lot more on fire here. Next up, the tallest mountain turned into Master Evil Wonker's Nether Brick Castle. And my god, this was freaking insane. This one challenge right here in particular took forever to do. Ultimately, though, what we did was we ultimately also had to go by a few codes to be able to actually get into the castle officially. By climbing our way up there, of course, we were greeted by Master Evil Wonkers. And in the process, we ultimately had to do a ton of lava parkour as well in the process to get the August 4th item. Ultimately, though, after this, we had to fight a ton of Zoglins. And oh boy, it was difficult as heck. Fun fact, the Blaze boss fight in the wilderness and the Zoglin boss fight here on the castle were both done in the same episode. The August 4th episode, to be exact. Next up in our storyline here, for the Volcanic Island storyline, was Evil Cluck's Deep Slate Castle. We purposely had to answer a few questions related to LEGO's Island Summer and Evil Cluck's existence here on the island overall to bypass and get into the castle. Ultimately, once we got in there, while we did collect a few items and encounter Evil Cluck at one point, ultimately, this turned into a literal freaking war. And by war, I mean a literal freaking war. There were guards blocking the castle, and ultimately to get all the items, we had to purposely defeat them all. And this was extremely difficult, as you could see. Yeah, we had to go against Vindicators, Evokers, and Pillagers. There we go, that's what I was looking for. And ultimately, yeah, it was pretty difficult. You could see how many times I died here. Lastly, but not least, at the village, to wrap it all up, right before the end of the event, we had to destroy the entire volcano. And by the way, throughout the event, we actually had to destroy the volcano. Ultimately, though, we actually defeated both Evil Cluck and Master Evil Wonkers, the ones behind us all. And ultimately, what we decided to do was ultimately blow up the entire freaking village. By that I mean that was actually legit. If I can get the footage, of course. Let's see if I can find the footage. There we go. As you can tell, most of the village was wrecked. And it took forever to clean this up, by the way. Not just the lava, but the entire village just to put it all back together and put it back in its original state. That alone took forever. Thankfully, I didn't have to worry about that for a few weeks as, actually, there's one other thing about this LEGO's Island Summer that makes it different from all the others, which I'll jump into later, because, this last part of the event will explain everything. Speaking of which, after we defeated Master Evil Wonkers and Evil Cluck, the reward was the New York rooms, as at this time, this was actually the day that I was arriving in New York at the time, alone. So that was actually really awesome. Yep, the reward for completing the survival mission, the volcanic mission, was actually going to the New York rooms, which did make sense as I was actually there during this time. Of course, this episode was uploaded before I actually left. Of course. And with that being said, Yeah, it was basically as expected. Yep, we basically wrapped up the entire event here in all these New York rooms, which is probably going to be the only time that this is going to happen. Yep, we ultimately wrapped up the event in a completely different way. If you thought the Volcanic Island storyline was insane, just imagine how we wrapped up the entire event overall by being somewhere completely different from what we were used to in the previous 4 Legos Island Summers. This was a complete change to how this would be. Now, don't worry, we are back to tradition this year in 2023, as we are not going back up that late again this year. And I do have reasons as to why I can say that, because that's actually true. I'm not making that up. Trust me, this year I will actually be home for the event ending. Of course, we didn't just end the event like right here in the Buffalo Houses. Oh, no, God, no, there had to be a second location. In the final few days of the event, we went somewhere completely different compared to what we were used to in previous Legos Island Summers. Instead of the hotel rooftop, we actually did it completely different. A recreated version of the Thousand Islands, because at the time that Legos Island Summer was ending, I was in the Thousand Islands, which was awesome at the time. The rooms were later redesigned to be more accurate to what I actually saw back in the day. And, yeah. So this was the place that ultimately ended Legos Island Summer 2022. And it was one crazy ride. And it was absolutely insane to believe that it all ended here, in a completely different place. Unfortunately, as sad as it may seem for me to tell you, that is not going to be the case this year around, unfortunately. It will be back to the traditional hotel rooftop, but I'm pretty sure we are all familiar with that at this point, so this isn't probably not a surprise. It was nice to finally try something new after all these years, especially since we weren't even at home this year when the event ended. Speaking of which, the finale itself. While it was basically what we were used to in all Legos Island Summers, go to each respective area and collect one said item related to the event throughout the 3-month length of the event, this year was actually different, as ultimately it ended somewhere completely different, as I addressed. It went longer than anticipated. That is right. For the first time in Legos Island Summer history, it started on June 1st, as we are all familiar with, and this is why I didn't mention the date originally. And for the first time ever, it started on June 1st and ended September 5th instead of September 1st. That is right. It ended on September 5th instead of September 1st, like it normally would have. This was due to the fact that I was away at the time, and I was not at home to clean up the event on September 1st, respectively. This is because, again, I was away. Now, my goal before going to New York at this time was to actually clean up the event prior to going there and have a pre-recorded episode on September 1st. As you were all aware, that obviously didn't happen, as I ran out of time. And ultimately, it ended on September 5th instead, whereas the finale does say September 5th, 2022. And because of this extension, there were 4 extra items added to this event. Items 93, 94, 95, and 96 on September 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, respectively, to make up for this extension. This will be the only time this ever happens because, like I said, I will be home this year for the finale, which means we do not need to run into this issue ever again. You really thought we were done with LA Summer? Oh, freaking God, no. Did I forget to mention we still had, once again, a 4th of July party right before the huge volcanic takeover happened? It obviously lasted only one day, July 4th, as per usual. And this year, it was back to being all across the island, which was awesome, after only seeing it in one room the year prior due to it being World Tour. This year around, I went absolutely freaking nuts and decorated basically everything possibly imaginable. The entire island was decorated. Okay, like that, at least just like a good majority. And it was so freaking awesome. 4th of July sheep made a return again. And ultimately, that was awesome. And with that being said, this was one of the biggest 4th of July parties. And honestly, one of my personal favorite 4th of July parties in Legos Island. I do not understand why I needed to go into the insane. I even kept saying throughout the video, I did not need to go that insane, but I did it anyway because why not? Now, you're probably all wondering, am I doing that again? God, no! The only reason I did it last year is because I wanted to see how insane I could get and how much creative I have gotten over the last few years. That's it. I'm not doing it again this year because purposely there is no reason. And plus also, I think it also took forever to clean up, by the way. Legos Island Summer, by the way, took 2 days to clean up. This event probably took maybe like almost the exact same amount of time. Holy frick, man, it took forever to clean up. And holy frick, was it worth having it go this insane? Oh, frick, yes. And this was right before it turned into the magma area. Ultimately, there were 4th of July items scattered around the island, and some places were decorated that normally were not decorated in years past, which was actually really awesome. It was nice seeing some rooms that were never decorated before. And ultimately, that was awesome. Just seeing places that were never decorated in years past actually get decorated this time. I'm actually glad because it truly showed that yeah. Anyway. Anyway. Okay, I kind of got off topic because I was replying to Cool Cat Very Free about something regarding Saturday stories. Anyway, there's not much else to say. Aside from that, we did get a ton of awesome custom 4th of July items. Some related to the actual 4th of July flag, and some for an alternate version of the 4th of July flag, or just American flag. Those were really cool custom items that I implemented. The same thing could be found in the ZL2 version of this set party as well. Just not as insane, but still insane at the same time. Now we can finally jump into September. Good lord. Due to Legos Island Summer 2022 ending later than expected, there was no Labor Day party. And this made sense as I also only had just gotten back home from New York at the time on, well, the night prior to Labor Day. And I was way too freaking tired to even think about doing a Labor Day party. And plus I had the entirety of LA Summer to clean up that day. So instead we fast forward all the way to the theme park 4th anniversary party / fair 2022. It started on September 15th and ended on September 19th. During this party, it obviously celebrated the 4-year anniversary of course, the theme park that we have all come to know and love, which is awesome. This also had to be one of the weaker fairs in my opinion, as there wasn't really that many fair games. And most of them related to pretty much nothing. All there was mainly just some fair decorations and just anniversary decorations mainly. While there were a ton of awesome items, I didn't actually get that creative enough with this fair. And I can tell you that I'm not joking about that. See, let's fast forward all the way to here. You see, these in particular were opened back up in sake of not really thinking of anything new. Plus also, I was running out of ideas at the time. So purposely what I had decided to do was mainly just bring back some of the medieval rooms as games for the fair. I know, this sounded lazy, and I can admit myself it was as well. Ultimately though, thankfully, we did ultimately have some other games in the process as well. Ultimately, we even had, where the frick is it? I think there was like cornhole too. So that was pretty cool. Yeah, there was cornhole too. Yeah, like over there actually on the Two Small Mountains, there was cornhole, so that was pretty sweet. Yep, right there. Yep, there was cornhole up there, so that was a nice little addition. But man, oh man, this was a crazy fair. Or just theme park anniversary. It was more just the theme park anniversary, and actually one of the unreleased rooms, or just rooms that never actually saw the light of day fully, was one of the Legos Island summer rooms, the Golden Carrot room, as it was ultimately changed when the Volcanic Island started. So ultimately, we actually reused this room because it didn't actually serve its full potential in the event because of the Volcanic storyline. Ultimately, in one of the three item booths, you purposely had to guess which one held the said item. And I think, if I recall correctly, I'm pretty sure this was... I think the fair banner for the year. If I recall correctly. Where was it? Yeah, it was the fair banner. And it was held specifically in this door specifically. You had to predict which one had the fair banner. So that was a nice little usage of this room that never saw its full potential. And so this party, of course. So ultimately, that was pretty cool. Aside from that, this fair didn't really offer that much outside of just cornhole, all the medieval game rooms, and, well, that unreleased room from LA Summer. Outside of that, this was one of the weaker fairs, and I hope to make up for that when we do the actual fair event in May, and then the theme park anniversary standalone in September for its 5th anniversary to make up for this. But I will admit I did do something. But there is one difference. There was a water slide in that room after not having it in LI Summer originally because of the Volcanic Island storyline. Ultimately, that was it for this event. Next up was Operation Slime 2022. It started on September 19th and ended on the 26th. Like the original Operation Slime, the name and story still applies. The island gets all covered in slime, which is obviously what it was known here for. The layout similar to Operation Evil Cluck in 2020 is like the port design but now slimed. But as I addressed, all rooms that were designed here were all decorated in slime. That was really cool. Well, they were all covered in slime, which I would later have to clean up in the actual event throughout the missions that spread it across the week. Ultimately, this was way harder than the original. And unlike the original, we actually finished this event. Yeah, did I ever mention the original was never actually fully finished? Well, this time, 2 years later, we actually finished it, which was awesome. Ultimately, that was really cool. And with that being said, this was actually really freaking cool. As some rooms that were never there in the original were actually covered in slime this time. Like the Buffalo House, for example, and the whole entire dog park. This was insane, and it took forever for me to clean up these rooms. Ultimately, speaking of which, where's the part where we actually did that? Ultimately, cleaning this up was absolutely insane. You could tell this was way harder than the original, as there was so much more slime to clean up as compared to the original events. Of course, who was behind this? Ultimately, well, first I gotta actually mention the battle. Oh yeah, it was Evil She Leader who was behind this. The battle was actually really fun, as it actually took the actual purpose of slime and actually made me battle against slimes, as the name suggests. This was honestly the more creative idea. I hope, at least. You can correct me in the comments if you think that's not creative, but either way, I think it was at the time. I had to clean up slime as I went, because, yeah, there had to be slimes literally everywhere as I kept cleaning up slime in the final battle. This ultimately resulted in one of the craziest Operation Slime battles. And it was insane how all this went down. Now, to be exact, what was going on during this party, because there was a mini-event, of course. Before that, ultimately, Evil Sheet Leader was defeated, of course. We killed him off pretty easily, I'm not gonna lie. Yeah, we killed off Evil Sheet Leader pretty easily. And honestly, by complete accident at first. Wait a minute. Was that Evil Sheet Leader that was behind this? I'm pretty sure he was. I'm just trying to remind myself. Just checking real quick. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was him. Either way, like I said, a mini-event. There was a fall mini-event held on September 22nd to celebrate the start of fall. In fact, it was on the actual day that fall started. It started on September 22nd and ended on September 26th, the day Operation Slime ended. This was going on during the halfway point in the event, so that would make sense. Some items were hidden, like pretty hidden, and some were not. But the point is, due to Operation Slime ongoing at the time, only certain rooms were decorated for this party, which weren't actually that many. But I'll tell you though, it was pretty sweet having some of these actually decorated for this party. And ultimately, that was awesome at the time. Yeah, there weren't that many rooms decorated, maybe only like 2 or 3, like my cave and... Oh, right, my cave I don't think actually was decorated, right? Oh, no, wait, sorry. The event room was decorated. There we go. The event room, 2 Small Mountains and Resort. I think we're the only, 3 rooms decorated for this party because of Operation Slime ongoing. That would be kind of understandable because most of the island would be covered in slime. But it was pretty cool. We did get a few fall items. Of course, I didn't want to forget about the event, and of course, I will do exactly the same, and I'll make sure to remember the event this year, too. I didn't mention it in the what's coming for 2023 because that was already pretty obvious. But I thought I'd just bring it up here. The day that Operation Slime ended was actually the Medieval Kingdom 3rd Anniversary Day. So, in respect, the entire kingdom was at nighttime and ultimately had a few colors. This was actually... Fun fact, did you know that this room from the fair actually stayed because of the 3rd anniversary of the Medieval Kingdom? It stayed from the fair event, actually. But ultimately, it was just all nighttime, and, well, it sure was for a reason, because everything was, lit up at the time, so that was pretty sweet. Obviously, this was just a one-day mini-event that happened on September 26th. And I don't think we've ever had anything held here ever since. Except maybe for Halloween. I don't know. But actually, speaking of Halloween, I think that's actually up next. We're actually nearing the end of the year, actually. I'm not joking, guys. We are nearing the end of the year, actually. We are actually almost done. I know. We are almost exactly 2 hours in, but... Man, we did a lot more in 2022 than I intentionally thought. Holy frick! Either way, though, this anniversary party was seriously cool. Like that May segment, for example. That all had anniversary cakes. And everything was just lit up like crazy. And it was so freaking awesome. Having everything lit up. It was just amazing at the time. And with that being said, with nothing else to say, of course, the only item available was, of course, the anniversary hat. Let's move on to the next event. The next event to occur in Legos Island was, of course, the Halloween party, or just Legos Island Halloween 2022. It started on October 1st and ended on November 1st. The theme, obviously, was completely different compared to previous years. This year, it was based off of a zombie apocalypse. I mean, hey, I had to think of something at this point, as the year prior was all about trick-or-treating, which was completely removed from this party after the year prior. The candy stations were still lying around, though. I think I think this might actually have been the first Legos Island Halloween where I don't think the candy stations were even lit up or even just there at all. Anyway, the point remains. The entire island looked like a zombie apocalypse as the zombies had taken over. And oh boy, it sure did look like a zombie apocalypse, alright. Oh, it freaking sure did. Some elements of the Deep Dark also appeared in this party right before the ZL2 one started. So that was pretty cool. Ultimately, this was a really fun party. And of course, along the way, we battled many, many zombies. There were graveyards everywhere as well. And ultimately, this was so much fun. The main objective was killing zombies so that you could actually rack up points to earn specific items. Remember the year prior when we had to hunt down all that candy to find all of the to claim specific items with said candies in a certain amount? Think back to that, and we did the same thing this year, but with killing zombies. I have zero clue what I am doing for Halloween this year around, but hey, I have another 9 months to think about that. 9 months and 10 days to think about that. Speaking of which, this would be the last Legos Island Halloween to be a month long. Probably forever. Now, why? First off, I think it honestly went a little too long. While it was cool for 2 years, I truly think it went on pretty long. Now, the zombie apocalypse lasting for a month? Yeah, that was planned. But ultimately, I don't feel like having them a month long anymore. So this was the last one. But I'll admit, though, I had way too much fun making this event. The zombie apocalypse idea I had thought of for a while, actually, prior to this party. And it was really cool. I thought about it all the way back at I think the beginning of the year. And well, I delivered. It was so freaking awesome. Of course, the skyscraper had different challenges as well, but I don't think they were showcased in this video. Ultimately, this party was awesome. So yeah, we had a literal zombie apocalypse all over the island, and everything looked really, really eerie. And the Haunted Mansion made a return after 2 years at the time, so that was pretty sweet. And the Haunted Mansion will, of course, be back this year in 2023 once again. If I can think of anything unique for it, of course, you guys might want to help me on that when we get to October. And now that the event's not going to be a month long this time, we actually have plenty of time in October to discuss that. Anyway, with that being said, that's really it. I genuinely cannot think of anything else to say about this party. Aside from the fact that it was really fun killing all those zombies. In fact, actually, it was so insane that the entire theme park even got taken over. And here's proof that this was actually legit about the zombie apocalypse thing. Yeah, the apocalypse was not a joke. As it did actually end up happening. Look at this. This is literally what I meant by the apocalypse. There was literally zombies everywhere. And we had a little icon right next to my pickaxe showcasing how many zombies were killed throughout the month of October. All leading up to specific items as I addressed. Ultimately, I don't think this is the best Legos Island Halloween I've done. I don't even know which one to even consider my personal favorite at this point. I don't know if it's 2019 or 2020. I don't even know, but I still appreciate this one. And, at least I have another 9 months to think about what I want to do for this year. Anyway, with that being said, this was a really fun party. And I truly hope you guys loved it back then. You can obviously go watch all these original videos to see when all this happened. But either way, oh yeah, I forgot to mention the Haunted Mansion. I completely forgot to tell you guys about that. Well, outside of just me telling you that it was brought back. ultimately, the Haunted Mansion was brought back, and it was great. It was nice seeing this again after 2 years. And it truly looked completely different compared to the year prior. And you could tell it was, because it truly did look like it. This Haunted Mansion was even more haunted than the previous ones, and was probably the most haunted one out of all 3 combined. Later on October 15th, the rest of the island was actually decorated, as some of it I couldn't actually get to on day 1. But later on October 15th, the rest was updated. We had a little update sign there telling that this was legit. Rooms such as the underwater room, and I think even the maze itself, were all decorated. And yeah, see, even the maze was decorated. That proved that this was not a joke. And it was awesome, having the rest of the island decorated. Even the HQ was not decorated at first, but there it was. And it was awesome. Ultimately, this had to be one of the most biggest Halloween events I had ever done on Legos Island. And even the Little Fallon Islands area was decorated too. Which proves I wasn't messing around. And yes, did I mention that these rooms actually did stay permanent after Legos Island Summer? Yep. Anyway, outside of that, that is basically it for the events. Outside of one last thing I forgot to mention. For the 2022 Halloween Showdown on the hotel roof, well, you could tell it was against a ton of zombies from the past month, as it was all about an apocalypse. Of course, things could not be just about zombies. Of course, we had to add in the warden too. I mean, some deep dark elements were added to this party too, so it made sense. This was done the same day that we did the ZL2 battle against him. So that was also pretty frickin' sweet. Anyway, with that genuinely being said, yeah, it was pretty insane. Let's finally move on. Hold up, one last key moment. In the Halloween theme park episode for 2022, there were zombies chasing me the whole time, embracing more of the apocalypse theme. I tried escaping them throughout the episode. It was a really nice challenge. So yeah, on October 10th, Husks now roamed the island at the time. For the 4th anniversary of the clothes shop, to even be able to even get there in general, we actually had to fight against a ton of zombies. It took forever to get into the clothes shop to see the anniversary, but we ultimately did get in there at one point and ultimately celebrated the anniversary. It only lasted for one day, October 10th, as usual. And the only item was the anniversary hat. Psyche! There was also a banner. Yeah, do you really think I was going to forget about that one? Anyway, the actual point remains. Let's actually take a look at this. Yeah, it took forever to get rid of the zombies. But ultimately, this was amazing. Oh, I forgot to mention about the skyscraper. Yeah, all the challenges were new. Forgot to mention. Oh yeah, you could also get costumes based off of the zombies that were raiding. Anyway, the 4th anniversary was mainly based off of the apocalypse, of the zombie apocalypse. So that was pretty sweet. So ultimately, yeah. That was something. I'll tell you that. That was something. Of course, another yearbook as usual. And, yeah, that was basically it. It was just mainly based off the zombie apocalypse theme. But an anniversary nevertheless. Since the base was extremely far away from Legos Island, we didn't have to worry about zombies. On October 14th, 2022, the day that this event was held, the base celebrated its 4th anniversary on October 14th. Yeah, we had those guys around the Alas. With that being said, this was pretty cool. While it wasn't as huge as the 3rd anniversary of the base, it was still something. At least this time it wasn't fully, completely dark. This time it was back to a more bright tone. But there were still some Halloween decorations lying around. Anyway, outside of that, that's really it. As usual, the base was just decorated with some anniversary colors such as tan, pink, and light green. Those were the 3 main colors, at least. And, well, yeah, basically all the rooms that were decorated the year prior, outside of, well, the ones that were decorated in the first and second anniversary, those were like the only ones that were decorated again. And genuinely speaking, oh yeah, that was HQ Secretary from like February. Yeah, we ultimately had to kill her. But it didn't matter because that was just a random clone. But yeah, ultimately, yeah, it was basically just like the first and second anniversaries again. And, well, that had to be probably the biggest base anniversary cake we had at the time, actually. Now that I think about it. So, genuinely speaking, that was pretty insane. And with that being said, the only item available, of course, was just the anniversary hat itself. I mean, that was pretty obvious. Outside of that, mainly all the rooms were just Halloween themed again. And it made sense around this time because it was Halloween month at the time. So ultimately, yeah, I think the hat was actually hidden behind the cake this year around rather than in front of it like previous years. That was a difference. Ultimately, it was basically like the first and second and third anniversaries again, just with different colors. So, yeah, I'll tell you though, it was definitely a lot brighter than the third anniversary at least. With that being said, I do like the colors I chose. They were really cool. Moving on to the last event of October. And then, November. The Resort 4th Anniversary Party. This took place only on Thursday, October 27th, 2022. And, well, yeah. Once again, it was based off of the zombie apocalypse theme. Every anniversary this month, except for the base, was based off of the zombie apocalypse. Which is as expected. And so much so that even the 4 on the cake was, like, eaten up by the zombies. To prove that this wasn't a joke. You could tell there. That was a nice little attention to detail right there. With that being said, yeah. Now, the hat, I think, was actually completely hidden this time. From what I'm aware, the hat was hidden under one of the many graves at the resort. Which was a nice little addition. I'll admit that one for you guys. That was nice, and that was a nice little addition. Where the hat was ultimately hidden amongst one of the graves. And there were tons of them, so you had multiple options to find out where it could have been. Ultimately, if we look, it was like right around here or something. So that was something. And it was really fun. So much so that we ultimately got an entire challenge based off the Resort 4th Anniversary in favor of the zombie apocalypse. And this was just one of the many apocalypse challenges that we had during this party. Ultimately, this was insane. The challenge was to get the four cakes, referencing the number 4 for this anniversary, bring them back to our side of the room, while trying to kill all the zombies at the same time. That was really awesome, and it was all based off the resort anniversary. That was so freaking cool! And it proves I truly can be creative with these events. And that's it! That's all that needs to be said here. Let's move on. The 5-year anniversary of my return to Legos Island, and the 3-year anniversary since the first ever Operation Legos Island. This was held on Thursday, November 3rd, 2022, in celebration of these two events' anniversary. Well, one of them is an event, and one of them is just a random comeback, which ultimately changed Legos Island forever, so this had to be celebrated. This would be the 2nd year in a row that this would be celebrated. It would also be the final year in a row that this would be celebrated yearly. As from this point forward, there's no reason to bring this back until 2024 for Operation Legos Island's 5th anniversary. So this year, this is not being celebrated. This was confirmed by Cool Cat 33. And ultimately, that's fine, because we don't need to celebrate this literally every single year. The only reason I did it again is because it was so awesome the year prior. Ultimately, this was just a one-day event. The difference was that the night sky was a lot lighter, and ultimately, the decorations almost looked exactly the same. Well, how many decorations in the room there were exactly the same. Of course, the decorations being completely different from the year prior, of course. That was pretty obvious. But the point is, I feel this was bigger than the previous, as, well, the cakes were way bigger. We could clearly see that. And ultimately, while there weren't that many items released during this, I'll admit, though, it was still a fun time. There weren't that many items released during this, but I'll admit, it was nice either way. And ultimately, this was awesome. Celebrating 5 years of my return was just freaking amazing at the time. And celebrating 3 years of Operation Legos Island was also awesome. And yes, we had references to all 4 Legos Island, Operation Legos Islands that preceded this anniversary. And that's really awesome. So that was pretty sweet. That was a little nice surprise. Yep, the Operation Ally 2022 hat. We only offered this and that anniversary hat for that because all the other ones were offered a year prior. Ultimately, this wasn't really anything too special. Of course, it is a very special day, but of course, not too much for this mini event outside of it just being held again for the 2nd year in a row. Again, this would be the last time this is celebrated until 2024 for the 5-year anniversary of Operation Legos Island. And then it won't be held again until 2027. And then 2029. Okay, I'm going a little too ahead here, but the point is, next! And we're actually nearing the end of the year, which is awesome. Like, we are getting really close to the end of the year. That's right. We literally hit the 700th episode of Legos Island on the same day that Camp Island happened for 2022. Both parties, respectively, Camp Island and the 700th episode party. It started on November 10th and ended on the 15th. This was actually only supposed to be a 2-day event for both, respectively, because I wanted a few days off before our next event, which we'll get to in a minute. Now, the reason I made this longer is just because, well, we were going to have a bunch of downtime before LA Christmas, so, yeah. And speaking of which, we did actually have downtime this time before LA Christmas. I'll get to that later. Ultimately, Camp Island itself. Let's talk about that first. As in tradition, this was in celebration of the 4-year anniversary of the campsite. And of course, as usual, this event will be held again without the milestone party this time on November 10th, 2023 for its 5th anniversary. With that being said, the point remains. This one took more of a fall theme, actually. That's right. This one actually took more of a fall theme. Like more of a fall camp. I know, that doesn't really make sense in terms of this, but whatever. Point is, yeah, it took more of a fall theme, actually, for Camp Island, and it's pretty insane where this went. As usual, we had camp armor. As usual, that would unlock every day of the event, including, of course, a yearly camp banner, and some rooms that are normally not decorated for Camp Island were decorated as 700 episode rooms. Some elements of this party were actually 700 episode rooms, which were awesome, as it merged the two together. In fact, actually, I think this was the first Camp Island to be merged with something else, which was awesome at the time. I'm only joking, of course. Do you really think I was going to forget about 2021 when the Adventure Party was merged? Which, by the way, how long did it take you guys to notice there was no Adventure Party this year? or the Underwater Expedition, or Operation Wilderness. Notice all three of those are gone, because the next event after this was completely new. Either way, back to my points. Camp Island. Holy frick, man. This had to probably be the most absolutely freaking insane I had ever went for Camp Island. I gave it a more fall theme for some reason. I don't know, I thought it would look cool. I mean, I had to change the design eventually. Also, for the first time ever, the ground was actually changed to make it also look a little more camp themed, but fall themed at the same time for some reason. It's similar to how the fall event looked, and yeah, but that's nothing. The point is, this was a really fun party. Now, as for the 700th episode on the other hand, this party was again merged, with the beacons actually being the 700 episode beacons. During this party alone, as usual, it's pretty clear. Except this time, because this was merged with Camp Island, all items were respectively not free item bins. I think except, and I mean except, I think for the hat. Instead, what we did was guess what was different about this? This was the first ever time that, oh, never mind. Spoke too soon. This is for Camp Island. God dang it. But actually, going back to Camp Island, all items were actually hidden inside tents. I forgot to tell you that. Yep, completely forgot to tell you that. I tried acting more like a camp. Never mind, these were all still in bins. But as you could guess, these items were all from the past 100 episodes back when we hit 600 in February. So that was pretty cool. The colors for this party were all the ores, which was actually really unique and made it really special. I had that planned for a good while, actually. And this was back when I actually predicted episode 800 would get 33. Which is still true to be May 29th, 2023. And will probably be the only milestone we hit this year. With that being said, this was a really fun, double party. As it was a really cool party. The 700th episode was also a massive success, and I truly loved this party. It was a really fun event. However, the one downside to this party was the fact that while I did make this party, there was one major flaw. I was sick at the time. Yeah, that's the one major downfall. If you hadn't managed to notice, I was sick during this time, and I could barely use my voice. While this doesn't really affect the event, it majorly affected the episode, as half the time I could barely say anything, which was annoying. But that is one of the major downfalls about the episode, was the event I showcased it in. I was sick at the time, so I could sometimes not even use my voice half the time, which was just so annoying. But, yeah, that's just one of the major downfalls about this event. Either way, it was fantastic. I had a great time with this event. It was nice decorating the island like a camp for the 5th time in a row, but with a fall theme and 700 episodes. So, all the ores, which were in the Deep Slate versions, by the way, of these said ores in the game, it was awesome. And with that being said, now that I've talked enough about this event, we go on to the next event. And this one is freaking awesome. To celebrate 10 years since the event had occurred in the original Club Penguin in 2012, I did my own version of the famous event from that game, Operation Blackout. It started on November 15th and ended on the 25th. Fun fact, this had an original end date of December 6th, like the Club Penguin original. However, I decided to later change it to December 1st to make sense with LA Christmas start date. However, because I wanted actual downtime, I later changed it to the November 25th end date. In the events, well, you can clearly see the HQ got completely wrecked. And it was freaking insane. So much so that we had to make a backup campsite HQ until the HQ was resolved. And HQ secretary revealed to actually be alive during this party. After somehow staying alive after the Halloween Party 2022 in ZL3. So that was something. Either way, we had a little temporary HQ for Operation Blackout, and it was so cool. Fire Sheep and HQ Secretary got it the way throughout the blackout. This was awesome, and I truly made a great recreation of the events. Of course, Master Evil Oinkers, Evil Sheet Leader, and Evil Cluck, who previously all worked together to Operation Villains, which later caused us to lose ZL2, all worked together again in Operation Blackout, and ultimately took over the island as we knew it. This was actually freaking insane, and all the dogs were frozen solid. This was one insane event. And ultimately, this was absolutely nuts to a literal extent that even the freaking dog park was absolutely obliterated during this party. This right here, is what Evil Cluck probably would have done if he ever actually had control over the island. Which, at the time of this party, he did have control over the dog park and ultimately freaking destroyed it. Where all the tents, and even to this day, the tents have not returned to the dog park as of recording this video. But they will be in the spring once the winter luau is over. Anyway, with that being said, obviously, with this being an operation event, comes 6 missions. The first one, we needed to find a specific button to be able to find, well, you guessed it, a way to deactivate this right here. Yep, this was the machine that was causing the blackout. And it was insane. We found a button in the port to deactivate the machine. And this was absolutely insane. As time went on, the machine kept getting more and more destroyed. And ultimately, one step closer to saving the island. The sun was completely gone during this party. Ultimately, we had an item to help us out in the campsite to help make the missions a bit easier and way faster to help us save the island in time. All missions were done on these respective days, November 15th, 16th, 18th, 20th, 22nd, and 24th. Sound familiar? Because those were the exact same days they were in the original Club Penguin. Cool Cat Freddy Free popped that up, by the way. But unlike that original party, all of these missions were completely custom. And I can assure you by going through them right now. On November 16th, 2022, we had to literally find the lever without getting caught by searchlights, aka these searchlights specifically. We had iron armor to help us blend in so we wouldn't get caught by the searchlights. And ultimately, this was a really hard challenge. All of these missions were extremely difficult. And I can tell you for a fact that they were intentionally extremely difficult. And halfway through the mission, HQ Secretary gives me items to actually blend into the water as we went through the river. Anyway, so that was pretty cool. We were able to blend into the water thanks to these items. We had to de-enchant or just disenchant some armor from 2020, and we blended it into the river pretty well, actually. Outside of that, we did claim the lever later on. On November 18th, 2022, there was snow piling up, proving the blackout was getting worse. But that wasn't going to stop us from completing our mission. On November 18th, we had to go through the blackout base to receive the next lever to shut down the machine. And we used a redstone torch to help us. And we indeed went through the blackout maze. It was all around the other side of the island on this day. And oh boy, it was one tricky maze to navigate. We had to guide HQ Secretary throughout the maze, as we did guide her throughout basically all of these missions. For the most part. Anyway, outside of that, yeah, the maze was pretty difficult. There was even this one section where you purposely had to get alongside the fence to be able to jump over to get over to the other side of the maze. That was a little tricky to figure out, but it was pretty easy. The redstone torch didn't really serve us that much use, but I can tell you, at least helped a bit. And of course, we made our way to the end and ultimately found the next lever. On November 20th, we had to go to Zulastad 3 right before the 100 episode party for that world that day and complete the mission and find the lever while blind. This was a really hard challenge, as we could basically see nothing. This was insanely difficult. All we had was just a little lantern to help us see where we were. This was hard, and it took a while to find that lever, I'll tell you that. It took forever to find that lever. Anyway, the point is, yeah, it took a bit of time to find that lever, but eventually over time we did find it somewhere hidden in the room, right around here, or more importantly, right here. We found the lever right there, and all was saved. Woo! On November 21st/22nd of 2022, basically the entire island was covered in snow at this point. But once again, this was not going to stop us from finishing the event or completing our next mission. Speaking of which, on November 22nd, we had to go to Evil Sheep Leader's lava base to be able to save Flower Sheep from Independent Doom, as she was the only sheep alive at the time after the death of all the sheep in the Halloween Party 2022. This was really difficult, and I'll tell you that. It took us forever to be able to find a way to get her in here, but ultimately, we thankfully managed to get through it rather quickly, which was awesome. The problem is, though, we had to drag her all the way back to the campsite in all of this freezing snow. And yeah, it was pretty difficult. But we saved her nonetheless. Lastly, on November 24th, 2022, we had to make our way to a blackout base, with HQ Secretary and Colgate 33 Dog and Flower Sheep all being captured in there in the process. Ultimately, we made our way up to the blackout base and encountered many challenges. Ultimately, this was a true test of everything we did throughout the event over the course of the past 10 days leading up to this point. And let me tell you, it was hard. Some rooms, it was basically a literal test as we addressed. The entire blackout base was basically every challenge we did. It was pretty insane, I'm not gonna lie. This was actually insane. The base itself was awesome, and we even finally got to see the machine in person without actually having to do anything to it outside of destroying it. And when we were super close to getting that lever, they all reappeared at once and fought hard. So much so that the floor became magma blocks. to the point where we almost didn't survive sometimes. Ultimately, we won. And ultimately, the entire machine was destroyed. Ultimately ending Operation Blackout and the entirety of the event overall. As a reward for all of our hard work, Fire's and HQ Secretary gave us a reward. But that is related to another event that we're about to talk about in a few minutes. Either way, Operation Blackout was over, the sun came back, and all was done. During Operation Blackout, we actually had a few mini-events. This being, the first one being the Jungle Temple 4th anniversary. It only lasted the one day of November 17th. And well, in the process, we did have to go to ZL2 to find the hats, which at the time the Future Party was going on. Due to the blackout, the entire Jungle Temple was completely darkened with only cakes to light it. This is very similar to the power outage in ZL2 from earlier that year. Except this time, it was just because of the blackout. That's it. With that being said, basically, due to the blackout and due to it being super dark, the only decorations were cakes, and that would make total sense. Now, that can explain that, and obviously, I think the only item available, was just the hat itself, because of just how dark it was. Ultimately, this was a really cool one. As, of course, the light difference makes it for some decorations. Anyway, outside of that, that is basically it. There really wasn't much to say about this event outside of, well, it was just another Jungle Temple anniversary. Just darker. In terms of the lighting, of course, not like actual, dark. In terms of, horror. Oh, no. It was just dark in terms of its lighting. That's it. That's all I need to say. But when we get to the other side of the island anniversary, on the other hand, that was interesting. Instead of a usual anniversary party, and due to there being an Operation Blackout mission that day, instead, the reward for completing the mission and that maze was not just the lever, but the 4th anniversary hat for the other side of the island, because this was done on the other side of the island and on its anniversary day. Purposely, that is exactly what happened here. There was no actual anniversary decorations, but there was a hat still given out despite no anniversary party. It will be back this year for 5 years. And I forgot to mention something in Operation Blackout. When I completed the maze, ultimately, did I ever mention something? Well, I should mention that the entire maze disappeared. Apparently, it was activated only via the machine, which means once the machine part for that was activated, or just deactivated, the maze was as well. I forgot to mention that earlier as we went into Operation Blackout. Outside of that, it was a pretty nice mini event, and the hat actually, I think, stayed there for the entire event up until the 25th. Actually, I think I removed it the day after. The point is, next mini event, which is the last one. Remember the reward that HQ Secretary and Flower Sheep had for me after completing Operation Blackout? Yeah, did I actually mention that was a Thanksgiving mini-event because the final mission of Operation Blackout was on Thanksgiving, and it was held in the campsite in the celebration. For the first and only time in LA history, this was the only Thanksgiving mini-event to last one day. Now, why is this? Because this was literally the last day of Operation Blackout. And literally the one day after, the entirety of the event would technically be gone anyway, because some of it revolved around the room design from Operation Blackout. And since the event would be gone one day later, it didn't really make sense to keep it up after, as most of its design comes from the Operation Blackout design. So that's why it only lasted one day. This year around, it will be back to the traditional 3 days, starting on Thanksgiving and then ending on that Sunday after. Point is, well, we had another Thanksgiving mini event. And well, yeah, it was pretty nuts. There were banners. And there was even a gift. Which, if you remember saying me earlier, there were 4 dogs that joined the island in 2022. Yeah, I think you can see where this is freaking going. Yep, that is right. You heard me. For the 4th time this year, there was a new dog for one specific reason. This was Turkey, aka the Thanksgiving dog. This would be the last dog that we would get in Legos Island in 2022. But it wouldn't be too long after until our next dog in 2023. But I'll talk about that in a year's time. Point is, outside of that, that is it for this mini event. It only lasted one day. There was a Thanksgiving hat, banner, and of course the introduction of Turkey, the dog. So that was really cool. Outside of that, there is no other reason to continue talking about this, so let's move on to the last event of the year. Christmas, of freaking course. Prior to that party, though, there was a lot of snow left over from Operation Blackout, and you gotta be freaking kidding me, I forgot about the HQ anniversary. But hold on, this is before it. Prior to the Christmas party, there was again a lot of snow left over from Operation Blackout. This encompassed the snowstorm that occurred right before Christmas. There was even construction held here. Now, this is technically not an event, but I thought I'd just mention it for the sake of the video. Because, yeah, there was so much snow after. This was the Operation Blackout aftermath. I know this is technically not an event, but I again thought I'd just mention it for the sake of the video. Anyway, the point is, well, it was just preparations leading up to Christmas at this point. And, yeah, there's really not much to say. Except for this! Oh, come on! Did you really think I was going to forget about the HQ anniversary? What do you think? That was only a one-day mini-event, of course. November 26th, the day after Operation Blackout ended. Speaking of which, that snowstorm lasted from November 25th, ending December 1st. With most of it unburied by the time the Christmas event started. Which we will talk about in a minute. Point is, yep, for the first time since 2020, there was actually an HQ anniversary, because this year around there was no missions going on during this time. And secondly, the HQ wasn't blown up this time around during that. So, intentionally, we actually got one, which was awesome. Anyway, that's besides the point. As usual, there was only one item available, being the HQ 3rd anniversary hat, which was hidden inside the HQ banner chest, which was pretty cool. Not to mention that right before Christmas, a ton of rooms that would be later implemented for the event would be implemented for early for the Christmas event. Speaking of Christmas, just 2 days before the party began, we actually got a secondary update to the snowstorm. Except, it was actually preparations for the actual event itself. This was 2 days prior to the party. Now, I know this is nothing like an event, but I thought I'd, again, just bring it up for the literal sake of the video, as some of this actually does end up tying in to the actual party itself. Chili Wood's right there for an example. In fact, actually, this is actually still here today in 2023, only until March. So ultimately, yeah, there's a lot of construction that happened. Normally I don't mention construction, but it's necessary for something like this. A lot of this actually did end up leading into the actual event itself, but I know there was no reason to mention this, but I had to, because it was super cool. For real this time, though, Legos Island Christmas 2022, the final event of the year. Finally. And yeah, I think you can clearly tell we went over past the 2.5 hour mark. You gotta be freaking kidding me! Okay, apparently Legos Island was bigger than I thought. So, Legos Island Christmas 2022. It started on December 1st and ended on January 1st. In fact, actually, there's still one place that still has Christmas decks. The Lodge, as of recording this video. But that is meant to be cleaned up in the spring. Point is, this had to be my most original and most custom Legos Island Christmas I had ever done. It's now honestly my personal favorite after everything I did to it. Some of these elements actually date back all the way to Operation Blackout, which I was not expecting and was not planned, by the way, just to be clear. Nope. I thought of these ideas after Operation Blackout, of course. With that being said, the island looked extremely pretty for Christmas 2022. And at the dog park, as an example, there was a Christmas fair, which later gave me the idea to do it in ZL2 and Free in 2023. That's going to be something to look forward to. With that being said, on the other hand, this was really cool, having a little Christmas fair. That was awesome. Of course, that's just one of the many, many things that happened. Of course, some rooms, because also, fun fact, this was the 5-year anniversary since the first Legos Island Christmas, some rooms were decorated like past designs. For example, the blacksmith shop was decorated the exact same way as it was in 2021, as we could clearly see. But most of these rooms were mainly new custom rooms, like Resort, for example. That was named to Blizzard Beach. In fact, some of the elements are actually still here today and might return in the Winter Luau in February. The point is, this was my honest favorite Legos Island Christmas. And remember how I said some of these rooms would later appear? Yep. There you go. There's proof I wasn't joking. Point is, this was honestly amazing. The Pet Cemetery turned into the Christmas Bakery. That was awesome. And yeah, that is basically it. As usual, the Advent Calendar returned. And while there was no new holiday-themed dog this year for Christmas, that was not planned, by the way, ultimately, we purposely had a good time. And yes, here's proof the Advent Calendar did indeed return. Like this room right here from 2017. The Advent Calendar returned like usual all 25 days with completely new items, which was awesome at the time. It was nice seeing that. And yeah, even new Christmas-themed medieval banners. My god, this had to be my most customized Legos Island Christmas of all time. The watch was designed like a winter cabin, and it's still like this today, as of recording this video. And, well, all the Christmas elements have been removed, of course. But outside of that, see, this proves this was all a lot of creativity. Snow, the theme park was basically all covered in snow. And that was awesome. Yep, basically the entire thing. There was even snow sculptures. Cool Guy 33 predicted that, and he ended up being right, which was awesome. Ultimately, this had to be my favorite Legos Island Christmas of all time. This would also be the last time that it would be a month long, at least for this year around. Maybe next year we'll be back to this, but for this year I'm gonna take a break. Now, for Christmas, it makes way more sense to do it a month long because, well, you're mainly celebrating it all month long. Unlike Halloween. The point is, this was awesome. And I truly cannot tell you how much fun it was making this event overall. And ultimately, it was just so much fun. And even, I think all of the, I don't think these, ice core rooms were opened, but seriously, you can tell I had a lot of creativity going into this event, and it was just so awesome seeing what I had planned. And yes, the 12 days calendar returned as well. The port was designed like a Christmas town, if it wasn't already obvious, combining the past 5 years worth of designs into one, which was awesome. It was really cool seeing that. And with all that being said, that is it. After 2 hours and 50 minutes of random nonsense by yours truly, we are done. Legos Island in 2022 was insane, but not as insane as Zola 2 or 3. Ultimately, I'm not going to lie to you, it is literally 1:19 in the morning. I am tired as heck, and I'm going to get some sleep. Now, Cool Guy 33, by the way, I was replying to him as I was doing this story, so if you noticed halfway through this story I was not talking as much, yeah, that's probably why. Now, he actually predicted I would do the backyard events of 2021 and 2022. That was planned prior to me thinking of doing Legos Island. But ultimately, I wanted to get Legos Island out of the way, as I knew there was a lot more. Now, I do have an idea. I'm going to do the backyard events pretty much immediately after this. Many hours after. Well, actually, I'm not going to do it on January 15th, but maybe on January 16th if I have to do the ZL3 a version of the Solazab anniversary party. But I'll do the backyard events very soon. I can guarantee you on that one. Maybe 2 Saturday stories in one day on January 21st to make up for it. How does that sound? You guys comment below. Thank you so much for watching the Saturday stories. God dang it, we hit over the 2.5 hour mark. Again, you gotta be kidding me. This better be the last time. Thankfully, the backyard events of 2021 and 2022, obviously these are going to be 2 separate videos. Look out for that in the next episode of Saturday Stories, where we do 2021 and 2022 in 2 separate episodes that very day. I will assure you this is the only other one to be this long. And with that being said, I'll see you all next time. Goodbye. And well, here's the 2023, and hopefully not it being absolutely freaking insane as this year. Holy frick! Nothing will beat the labs, though.